Hal Jordan undertakes a mission to stop a Rage Lantern from spiraling out of control. Meanwhile, Kyle, Odyssey, and Connor Kent embark on a scavenger hunt to stop the Sorrow Lantern from creating his own central power battery. It's all right here in our review of Green Lantern number 20 from DC Comics. See you in 3. Welcome back to Comical Opinions. This is our review of Green Lantern number 20. Before we dig in, here's a quick recap. When we last left Hal Jordan and the new Corps in Green Lantern number 19, all was set right with the world when the Earth-based Green Power Battery was relocated from Earth to Oa. Jessica Cruz accepted the role as Guardian Council leader, and Sinestro reassumed his role as a Green Lantern after the events of the Civil Corps War. The fresh start was interrupted when Sorrow Lantern invaded Oa to steal an early version of the Book of Oa. Why? Because the book contains the secret for creating a power battery, and if the Sorrow Lantern creates his own power battery, the emotional spectrum will be fractured permanently. And that brings us to the current issue. In Green Lantern number 20, the wild chaos of an emotional spectrum gone awry continues. Hal Jordan receives an alert concerning a flare-up of rage energy on the planet called Alteon's X. When Hal arrives, he finds a lowly, bullied, and heartbroken blacksmith named Erastus, who was pushed to the breaking point by his abusive co-workers and loved ones. Erastus manifested Rage Lantern powers, and he used his smithing hammer to exact revenge on everyone who crossed him. In a completely separate thread, Kyle Rayner, Connor Kent, and Odyssey the Thief Through Time arrive at a point at the source wall where one of the components Sorrow Lantern needs to construct a central power battery is stored. They find a cave in the mouth of one of the statues that are placed in front of the wall, so they fly in to look for the first component of the recipe, a small portable orb that contains source energy. But before they get too far, they recognize that something valuable guarded in a very ancient tunnel is probably surrounded by a lot of booby traps. Odyssey has a convenient doohickey that she whips out that maps the entire cave in a hologram and points out where all the booby traps are located. When she confirms that none of the booby traps contain kryptonite, Connor brute forces his way through the tunnels, past the traps, to get to the prize, a small pedestal containing the orb. Kyle is thrilled to partake in an Indiana Jones-style treasure hunt, so he puts his construct skills to good use. When Connor snatches the orb, the cave starts to collapse, and they hop in a construct that looks like, very suspiciously, a mining cart, if you're aware of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, to make their escape. The issue concludes in the one thread with Hal learning that uncontrolled emotional spectrum energy can be explosively dangerous if it isn't reined in. In the second thread, Kyle's team learns who Sorrow Lantern reports to when Sorrow Lantern shows up with his boss. And that's the issue. Let's talk about impressions and critiques and whatnot. Generally, I like where Green Lantern number 20 is headed, but I think I can see how some readers may not be sold on what Jeremy Adams is trying to do here. Adams shows a strong desire to focus on that spirit of fun and adventure, which you don't get a lot of, especially from DC and Marvel. Everybody's dark and grim and dour and nihilistic. That's not happening here. You get a kind of a spirit of high adventure, very much in that line of Indiana Jones. The trick here, though, is in the execution, which is uneven. Before we get to positives and negatives, let's talk about the art for a second. We have guest artist Jack Herbert, who steps in to lend a hand on the art duties with a clean set of visuals to execute Adams' vision. We haven't really reviewed a comic with Herbert since his work on the Superman 2023 summer annual, so it's been a while, but it appears that Herbert hasn't lost his touch. Herbert's figure work is solid. The ring slinging action looks great, and that's one of the big pluses of this issue. We haven't seen a lot of one-on-one Lantern versus Lantern fights in a pretty long time, so you get it here and it looks pretty good. Also, the character gestures are on point because there's a lot of expressiveness, a lot of gesturing that's going on, particularly among Kyle, Odyssey, and Connor. Even Romulo Fajardo Jr.'s colors hit the mark in all the right ways to give you a pretty good looking comic. Alright, let's take care of them critiques, starting with what's great about Green Lantern number 20. Probably the most, I would say, appealing or the most gripping aspect of this issue are two independently strong plots that are happening in parallel. Hal's continuing mission to stop emotional spectrum flare-ups gives Adams an excuse to create strong, athletic, very engaging fights and there's an opportunity there to do that on a monthly basis with different scenarios, with different reasons to fight against different lanterns. So there's a lot of potential there. That looks really great, and also gives weight to the chaos that the fractured spectrum is causing across the galaxy. On the other hand, in the second thread, Kyle's ragtag scavenger hunt mission is the type of high adventure stuff that really does read like an Indiana Jones story, which is referenced pretty heavily here. On both cases, they're a net positive, and they're both still lighter and more interesting and more entertaining than the typical dour, nihilistic stuff you're getting from either Marvel and DC these days. So what could be better about Green Lantern number 20? There are two great plots for the price of one, which would be considered a boon if you're a Green Lantern fan. But readers may be put off by the jarring difference in tone between the two plots. Hal's fight against Erastus is tight and dramatic, and by showing the consequences of Hal's failure to get Erastus under control, this plot clarifies the potential damage and urgency if the Corps doesn't get the emotional spectrum under control. It's a problem. It's turning into a big problem, and here you see the consequences if they fail, which is a big positive. But on the flip side, Kyle's quest to get the source energy orb is the exact opposite of tight and dramatic. Kyle dons an Indiana Jones hat to underscore the fun he's having and kind of give you that light, airy spirit of adventure, but the team's cavalier attitude comes across as almost corny humor. Not quite too jokey, but there's a sort of eye-rolling corniness to it, which deflates the dramatic tension created by Hal's conflict. In other words, you have two great halves, but the two halves aren't great together, and so you have a comic that feels like it's fighting against itself. So final thoughts, what do we think about Green Lantern number 20? It's an entertaining issue that depicts the dire consequences of an emotional spectrum running amok, while you have a scavenger hunt that commences to stop the Sorrow Lantern's plans. It's clear Jeremy Adams' script was constructed with a focus on fun and adventure and thrills and all the things that go with it. Plus, Jack Herbert's artwork is pretty rock solid. Unfortunately, the one downside of this issue is the two plots tonally are at odds with each other, and it feels a bit jarring. Therefore, Green Lantern 20 from DC Comics earns a 7.8 out of 10. It's a good score, could be better, and really the big point that we're trying to emphasize here is that when you have two plots, they really need to complement each other. Here, they sort of complement each other, but there's some conflict going on that makes the experience a little bit weird and discontinuous. But you know what? What do you think? Are you enjoying what Jeremy Adams is trying to do here with the emotional spectrum, with the changes to the status quo in OA and everything that's going on there? Leave a comment below. Let us know what you think. And also, I want your opinion about which Green Lantern villain or major adversary you'd like to see show up in this run that maybe you haven't seen in a while. Are we talking Hector Hammond? Are we talking Parallax? Who do you think deserves to come back? Because, you know, it might be fun to see how this new Corps handles the threat. So, thank you very much for joining. Appreciate everything that our readers are doing to help support the channel. If you want to read the written review, click on the link in the description below. You get to read the full review with all the preview images and the covers. And if you are watching this on YouTube, please click on that subscribe link down below. We'd love to have you follow along. So thank you very much for joining, and stay tuned through the outro for more reviews just like this one.